Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is Denise Monroe-Rasnack. I am the current president of the NFBPWC virtual chapter, and I would like to welcome those of you who are live attending, either on computer or via their telephones, and for those who may be watching at a later date. This is our webinar, which is the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women update, and we have two very special guests with us tonight. We will have Kathy Kelly and Ashley Maria. For 1 second, I'm going to turn the microphone over to our secretary, Susan Oser, who will give some instructions so that we can try to have a pretty smooth and interactive and informative webinar. So Sue, take it away.
Yes, thank you very much, Janine, and welcome everyone. First of all, it's really nice to have a great number of people showing up, and we are very, very excited as a virtual club for that, for sure. So basically, I'm kind of the producer, director, tech guru, however you want to call me here for these webinars, and I'm going to be handling our start meeting logistics, and that includes running the PowerPoint, starting and stopping and recording, muting participants to eliminate any background noise, and I also will have some help with that. If you have any other electronic devices near your computer, this is very important, please either shut them off, remove them, or take them away from your computer because there can be some kind of feedback or noise, especially if you're on the phone. A few other logistics that I want to give you before we could start is you should see, if you're on the computer, you should see on your screen in the upper right corner what is referred to as a dashboard, and it contains the following: screen sharing, phone conference, and chat. If you click on the plus sign to expand that section, and I don't know what they've changed since they've done some updates, in the phone conference section, you should click on the picture, okay, for mic and speakers. You want to click on that. If you can mute yourself and just click on mute, that would be great. If there's going to be any background noise, we're going to try to eliminate that as much as possible. If you have any technical difficulties or get dropped from the webinar for whatever reason, you can always call in with the phone number that was listed and sent to you. I don't know if anybody's been sent a copy, but if you want a copy of this later on, we'll be more than happy to send it. And then the telephone number that you would call for start meeting will be on the directions. And of course, this meeting will be recorded. It will be posted up on our private YouTube channel in case you want to watch it again or you want to share it. Maybe make it as part of a presentation, however you're going to do that. So in addition, I do have a chat box that is open. So at any time you have a question or you want to say hello or you're just coming in, please feel free. We're going to save questions and any other introductions until after, not only for crowd control reasons because we have a lot of people, but also for time reasons as well. Okay, so with that, I will turn it back over to Janine. And Janine, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Sue. So at this time, I would like to introduce our presenter, Kathy Kelly. I'll do a brief introduction and then allow her to elaborate. I'm a firm believer that we, especially as women, don't toot our horns enough, so I'm going to give her the chance to do that. But briefly, Kathy has been a small business owner for more than 40 years. Her company, Personnel Profiles Incorporated, was established in 1971 and continues today. So that is, in and of itself is quite an accomplishment. She has been a 25-year member of Business and Professional Women, and she has attended I believe 10 of the CSWs, and she served as a delegate this year. We are extremely grateful and very excited to introduce Kathy, who will then introduce later on in the program our second speaker, Ashley. So Kathy, please take it away.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the National Federation of Business and Professional Women's Clubs debriefing on the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. So everyone gets annoyed with acronyms, but let's just shorten that to NFBPWC and the UN CSW. I want to first thank the NFBPWC Virtual Club for hosting this webinar. A special thanks to Deneen, our Virtual Club President, as well as our National PR Chair. And a very warm thank you, and I end up thanking this woman 3 or 4 times a week, is Michigan's President Sue Oser. Sue and I work on 2 or 3 other national committees as well. So thank you both so much for your support. I'm so excited to be your presenter tonight. I'm a proud member of Boulder, Colorado BPW, and I've served on most local and state positions. And like Deneen said, I think this is my 9th or 10th CSW, not always a delegate. I just finished a 3-year term as our BPW International Delegate to the Women for Water Partnership. And then I'm also currently the National Chair for the Lifelong Leadership and Learning Committee. So I'm hoping you'll all be attending some of my upcoming webinars, especially the one on April 1st, which is entitled NFBPWC, 100 Years in 1 Hour. So I hope you'll join me again on Monday night, and you can find that information on our website. Next slide, please. We are going to skip this because I was thinking 10 people or so, but this will take half the webinar. We're going to save this for later. So next slide, please. Great, and we have so much information to cover tonight. We'll have a little taste of CSW past. We'll touch upon the Sustainable Development Goals and share the key factors obtained from this CSW. And then we're going to hear from our very own young BPW, Ashley Maria. Modern CSWs have one priority theme and one review theme. The goal of CSW is to produce a document called the Agreed Conclusions. That document moves us forward in the global discussion for women's empowerment from many different angles. 45 of the 193 member states rotate through CSW every 4 years. The United States is a permanent representative to the UN, so we are always represented. Now this is, on the left is a photo of the country delegates celebrating the agreed conclusions at this CSW. And to the right are a few of our young BPW members who attended, including our very own Sophia Collins from Colorado. And there in the middle is Nalima, who's our international chair of young BPWs, and she is from Nepal. Next slide, please. So there's a wonderful and rich history and partnership with BPW and the UN. I copied this photo from our past international president and Florida BPW member, Liz Benham, who had the privilege of knowing these remarkable women. Ms. Heimer's story is literally a book in and of itself, which is called The Bus to 42nd Street. We also have roots with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and other amazing women of that era. NFBPWC was one of the first non-government organizations, or NGOs, to receive consultative status at the United Nations. Esther Heimer became aware of the potential value of NGOs and the meaningful role that we can help play to influence policies. In the Charter of the United Nations, it was provided that the Economic and Social Council, or ECOSOC, would make special arrangements for consultation with NGOs. Therefore, IFBPW sprang into action and made its request, which was granted in 1947. The UN Commission on the Status of Women was established by an ECOSOC resolution and a mandate to prepare recommendations on promoting women's rights in the political, the economic, civil, social, and educational fields, and is a functional commission dedicated exclusively to gender equality and the advancement of women. At the 50th anniversary of the Commission's work in 1997, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan had said, "The Commission has been a catalyst for women's equality. It has played a crucial role in monitoring progress in the advancement of women and in holding governments accountable for their actions. It is a place where all women have a voice in shaping the policies of the international policy. That's a very important work that we do at the United Nations, and you'll kind of see why as we continue on. So next slide, please. So today, BPW has UN reps all over the world. These reps spend most of their volunteer hours following UN issues that pertain to our mission statement to develop the business, professional, and leadership potential of women on all levels. So I wanted to note that the 5 women in the center are all US UN reps. And then I wanted to point out some very special women on the right. Top right in the red is Francesca Barak. She is a representative right there in New York City, and she is so instrumental in making sure that we all feel welcome and everything is organized when we come in for CSW, and descend upon her every year. In the middle is our very own Susan O'Malley. Now, Susan is so special because not only is a BPW member, but she has been the chair of an organization called NGO CSW. This organization puts on all of the parallel events and organizes the NGOs. If you can imagine, that is 9,500 women coming in from all over the world. And she organized over 400 parallel events for us over this 2-week period. This was her last year, and I'll tell you, she went out with a bang. Whoops! But then at the bottom, oh, sneak preview. At the bottom there is our International Vice President of United Nations Relations. So in a sense, Dr. Catherine Bossart is our boss. And we all report to her, and she keeps us organized as well. Now the next slide. And there she is. This is my beautiful, wonderful mentor, Elizabeth Van Arden. And she has mentored me from day one, taught me all the ropes. It is all I can do to keep up with her. And we have had some blustery days that we've walked through the streets of New York. But Elizabeth, and I hope you'll note this, because she does so much work for us still, and she's putting together the United Nations updates on our NFBPWC newsletter. So if you haven't read through that, this is a great resource to keep up to date on what's going on with the Gary. Oh. Okay. Am I good?
Yes.
Okay. Gosh, that was weird. So anyway, back to my Elizabeth. She goes through, there she is. She goes through, I'm just going to say hundreds of emails a week minimum, and goes through that and sorts that out for us and understands the lingo, which takes a college degree in and of itself. And then brings that down to where we can read it in one page and get the gist of it. So, okay, Elizabeth, I love you. You know it. So next slide, please. So let's dig a little deeper into the purpose and the structure of CSW. Here we see our wonderful young BPW reps in front of the SDG sign on the UN campus. Our international executive this year, I think, had an absolute stroke of genius. And what they did is they had a contest, really, for young BPWs around the world to compete for the honor of a UN pass. In fact, the UN, for the first time in my experience, was teaming with young women, all shapes and colors. It was beautiful. So what exactly are these SDGs? Next slide, please. These 17 common global goals are considered a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for us all. Although each goal stands alone, most of the SDGs are what we call cross-cutting. So for example, if you look at SDG number 5, that's gender equality. But SDG 4, quality education, and SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, are both essential to achieve SDG number 5. A case study is a young woman who starts menstruation. If she doesn't have clean water and sanitation, she won't go to school. And then we won't achieve gender equality. So this information, much more detailed because each one of these SDG has a 6.1.C.A, you know, how that drills down. So you can go to the UN Women website and really dig into these when you can't sleep at night. Next slide. So this year, in modern years, within the framework of those SDGs, each CSW also selects a priority theme that is the focus of all the events, conversations, and the agreed conclusions. The priority theme for CSW63 was social protection, public services, and infrastructure, and how they relate to gender equality and empowerment. And then our review theme was to review women's empowerment and the link to sustainable development, which were in the agreed conclusions of the 60th session. So keep that in mind as we go along. Next slide, please. So once we know our priority theme, BPW develops side and parallel events around that theme. There are two types of events at CSW. The side events are sponsored by a government and usually held in a mission, which is like an embassy, or on the UN campus. And then we have parallel events that are hosted by an NGO, and those are held outside the UN campus. You must have a delegate pass to enter the UN, but everyone is welcome space available to the parallel events. And of course, they're all free. But remember, there were 400 parallel events going on as well. Next slide, please. So these BPW side events are special for two reasons. First, we get an inside view of the work that other BPW federations are involved in. For example, Germany has a very, very strong equal pay program. They have so much support from the German government that they were able to display huge banners around Berlin. As well, other countries like Japan and Italy and New Zealand are all very, very supportive of their NGO delegates. We were invited for a nice coffee and some networking for the U.S. delegates, but unfortunately there's no substantive discussion or support that comes from them. And then secondly, this gives us another opportunity to get to know our BPW sisters from other countries. We can share best practices and collaborate on projects. And it's a very, very powerful thing that happens at CSW. Next slide. So there's an app for this. This is an example of not even like 2 sessions worth of parallel events that go on at CSW just on one day. So I have a degree in religious studies and a minor in women's studies, and I call CSW the Disneyland for sociologists. You can just imagine, look at the choices we have. And again, these parallel events are sponsored by an NGO, free of charge, and everyone is welcome. To be honest, I think the parallel events are often more lively and more interesting, whereas the side events are typically they are read from a prepared statement and a little bit stiff and formal. But again, you find out different perspectives, and the best practices that come out here are just amazing. So next slide. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what CSW does. Again, the principal output of the commission is the agreed conclusions on the priority themes set for each year. The agreed conclusions contain an analysis of the priority theme and they set concrete recommendations for governments, intergovernmental bodies, and other institutions, civil society actors, and other relevant stakeholders to be implemented at the international, national, regional, and local level. And that's where it gets sticky, because it's one thing for a government to talk and agree upon something at the United Nations when they have peer pressure, and it's another thing to take that back into their culture and their government and try to get it implemented. So in addition to the agreed conclusions, the Commission also adopts a number of resolutions on a range of issues. And again, this is a big deal. In essence, the agreed conclusions provide another building block toward achieving gender equality. So you remember earlier when we had the photo of the delegates chairing the consensus, they had gone for 3 nights in deliberations. And through a bit of a spin, I understand, on parliamentary procedure, the document got pushed through. Some years it doesn't pass. Some years it might be so diluted that we consider it a fail. But you know what? You take an inch when you can get it. Next slide, please. So the first section of the agreed conclusion reaffirms the work accomplished in the past, and there will be pages of it. And this allows the Commission to secure that stronghold. These are the 3 core UN resolutions on gender equality. Unfortunately, affirming these positions are sometimes difficult. So the United States, unfortunately, did not ratify CEDAW and held the position that we won't be held to UN standards, only our own. So this one step, reaffirming these international conventions and platforms, ends up to be a contentious issue. Unfortunately, the United States, I just understood, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, but I'm understanding that the Violence Against Women Act is in jeopardy right now here in this country. And Elizabeth and I were there at CSW when that was going through from an international standpoint. So next slide, please. And settle in for a few minutes, because we're going to, and please take some notes too for questions later, because we're really kind of going in a little bit deeper here. These 3 main, 4 points were upheld. The full document was just released, and it's on the UN Women's CSW website for those of you who enjoy legal documents. Following the process of this document, what stays in, what gets deleted, which countries are supportive, which aren't. It's all very interesting to watch. I want to spend some time about the informal or gig economy a little bit later. But the first thing is that we women, because we love our loved ones, spend an enormous amount of time with unpaid labor, which is kind of the equivalent to slavery. But there's ways that you can recognize that unpaid labor as valuable. You can reduce it or redistribute it. And there's ways to do it. And so some of the best practices that are discussed year after year on this one particular issue is, for instance, let's say that you take 5 years off to have your babies and to, or you need to take 5 years off to help one of your elderly parents in their end-of-life issues. What if the country actually kept contributions going in your Social Security so that you aren't penalized at the end of or into your retirement years for giving that care? So that's one of the ideas that get pushed around. Eliminating barriers, especially transportation, was another big issue, because if you can imagine, if little girls can't get to school safely, we might as well knock off a couple of those SDGs. And it doesn't just happen in developing countries. They told a story of a young woman recently in New York City who had her stroller and started going down some of those steep stairs, and she fell and she died. So when we think about what women schlep, we're schlepping groceries, we're schlepping children, we've got grandma in a wheelchair. That access to public service is a women's issue. As I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit later about the gig economy, time permitting, but it's right now 61% of the world's workforce is in an informal or gig economy. So that could be me as a small business owner waiting for the next order. Or it could be the young woman in Africa who works at a market selling vegetables who just had a baby. She knows if she doesn't return to work immediately, she'll lose her spot. So newborn baby comes with her in a cardboard box. There's no social protection set for contract workers here or in any other place. And the UN Women calls this gig economy a megatrend and expects that by 2030, the numbers are going to jump from 61% now into the high 70 percentiles. So a lot of discussion was set around this megatrend and how we might be able to better ensure social systems to protect these often undocumented workers, who, of course, the vast majority are women. And with all of the unpaid labor that we take on, you know, some of us just can't do the 8 to 5 jobs with no flexibility. So how do we mandate this? Can we use technology to create a secondary platform for gig workers? So hopefully we'll have some time to talk about that later. And then I put in there water, because water is discussed in many, many aspects. Again, one of the biggest sources of unpaid labor in the world. And I believe the number is now 2 billion people still don't have access to clean water and sanitation. If you don't have that, you don't have any of the other SDGs. So next slide, please. Just as a teaser, I wanted to show a few of the past priority themes. And remember, these build on each other. So for example, we discussed transportation systems in terms of violence against women. We always remember our sisters with special needs and how that relates to that priority theme. Our rural women, women in developing countries, disabled, widowed, and the environment, the environment, the environment. We used to have a saying at my Women for Water partnership that when breaking the glass ceiling, don't forget our sisters with sticky floors. So we must be mindful to bring all of those women up with us, because those are the ones that don't have a voice. Next slide. And, well, that will include my portion of the presentation. Despite a whole lot of hard work and very little sleep, I just wanted to mention that we have one heck of a lot of fun at CSW. It's kind of like a global slumber party. We intended a couple, actually 2 or 3 Broadway shows, many wonderful dinners together. Thank you again, Francesca. We had luncheons, we had teas and the like for networking. And each year, BPW International plans its Claire Fulcher Gala. And this year we celebrated NFBPWC's 100th anniversary. So you can see that we were wearing flapper outfits. But I think the more accurate costume came from our National Secretary Marcia there and her suffragette there with Ashley. So when you learn about all the work these NGOs do around the world, it's just an honor to be with them, to push the wheel forward. And for me, the best thing about CSW is making new friends. So with that, if we could have the next slide, I'd like to introduce you to my absolutely favorite new friend, Ashley Maria. Ashley is a filmmaker based in Los Angeles, California, winner of the coveted Directors Guild of America. She was also featured by the DGA Women's Steering Committee as a director who represents the future of women in film. And when she's not running her own production, she's a directing instructor at UCLA. Her first feature documentary, Pioneers in Skirts, is in post-production, set to be released in mid-2019. And the film follows her own journey to understand the bias and sexism women confront in their careers and what we can do as a culture to evolve past it. If you can't find Ashley on a film set or behind a computer screen, you can find her out on the court playing competitive dodgeball. She was selected as NFBPWC's delegate to attend the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. So allow me to turn the presentation over to our young BPW CSW63 delegate, Ashley Maria.
Hey, is my volume working okay?
Yep.
All right. I thought the dodgeball thing would be cool. It gets us out of our heads and into the court. Am I right? Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Maria. Like she said, I'm a filmmaker, and this is my first time attending CSW. It was really my first time understanding what young BPW's role is in BPW altogether. So if a lot of these words aren't making sense, if you're hearing it for the first time, you're not alone. This was me 20 days ago. So I have evolved way past that now, and I'm actually now your young BPW chair for NFBPWC. So I am taking that delegation experience back home with me. And if you can go to the next slide, that is really what a lot of the goal was. So at the Leaders Summit, that is BPW's Leaders Summit that happened 2 days before CSW actually began. So it's like everybody showed up on a Friday, and all different time zones were like, all right, drink the coffee, let's go. And this table on the left is all the young BPW members that were there for the Leaders Summit, and our task was to figure out how do we make BPW sustainable, meaning how do we keep it going in the long run? We're the future of BPW. What are we going to do? And if anything, I think the biggest takeaway is the communication. So now that we've all met each other, like I was the only person, maybe there was 3 people at that table actually from the U.S. We had a huge group from Nigeria, from Brazil, and the Caribbean. So we had a lot of people in that room from all over the world, and we were sharing what each other does in their own clubs for young BPW, but just BPW in general, and just sharing ideas and what works. How do you get new members? How do you keep your members? And so we were coming up with a plan, and that's the very pretty picture on the right of the plan as young BPW members of how we're going to keep that communication open with each other. And we've already started. We've got a lot of chats going on what we're doing next in our local communities, because that was step 1, is bring all of these stories back to you all. So this tonight, I'm doing my homework. We're doing it. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. So I appreciate everybody on this call. Okay, next slide. So after our first day, again, young BPW representative, CSW hasn't even started yet. None of us really know what we're getting ourselves into. We just know that it's really cool to wear all these cool scarves. If you see it, we've all got one on. We're all taking tons of pictures, and we're like, it's fun to be in New York City. And so we have no idea what we're getting ourselves into. And in the middle there is Nalima. Again, Kathy mentioned she's the one who's the head of all of the young BPWs, so she was our go-to to help us figure out the week. Thank you for pointing. Yes. And what they had us do, because we did such a great job of presenting how we want to make BPW sustainable, they asked us how we're going to bring SDGs into our own countries, into our own local clubs. So again, SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's not just about gender equality. It's about that poverty. It's about water. It's about life on on land, and it's all of those things. So that actually became something we all really like talking about. Is all of our club meetings, our conversations don't have to be just about gender equality. We can open it up and talk about how do we as a woman engage in my community. And that is what a lot of these women talked about. So there was one woman on the far left. She's a medical writer, and she wants to teach women in her community about women's health. And then another one is starting a TV show to help women learn their own stories. And then another wants to help with the water that's in her own country. I think it was in Brazil. They're having a water issue where women, again, aren't able to obtain sanitation when they need it. And these are people in their own backyard. So this is how you can look at your own community and figure out what can you do right now. And so that was really empowering, is to figure out how BPW is really making a huge difference in these local communities by implementing these SDGs in different projects. So if there are any projects you have in mind, that's something that BPW International really wants to support you in, because then it gets communicated to United Nations, and that's pretty cool. So we had a really great time talking about how we're going to bring SDGs into our local communities, and as a young BPW chair for NFBPWC, I'm going to be working on that too. Okay, next slide. Okay, so finally, the United Nations Day has started. That was a Monday. They had us meeting at 7 a.m. This is actually in the United Nations, but I just want to give you some context. Every day, you're up before dawn and you are ready to go. We're all staying at the same hotel, basically. We're all having breakfast together, and we all rush over for the 8:30 a.m. Briefing. And it is just so fun because there are so many BPW members there that you're just running into each other. Oh, hey, which one, which panel, which parallel event, which side event? And you're just running around New York City, sitting in on these panels. Each one's about an hour and a half, having genuine conversations. Like, I ended up sitting next to one of the governors of Zimbabwe. And you're like, okay, this is why I'm here. This is why, because I'm having a genuine conversation with somebody from across the planet, and we're talking about the same issues. So it really brought everything that we're doing on our local end into this global scale. And I know that's my biggest takeaway, is now I'm looking at all of these issues globally, and how can I start making a difference, you know, outside my front door. So the reason I chose this photo is because Nalima, who's sitting next to me, she is, in a word, pissed, and we all were, because we were confronting someone on that panel, and they're not in the photo, so I'm not calling them out. We all were a little frustrated because somebody kept talking about how we need more gender equality in this and that and this and that, and this was somebody who did a panel, I guess, in June. There's a big ECOSOC meeting, and there were no men, or there were no women on any of these panels, and Nalima was upset that this person was over here saying, we need more women, yet they weren't actually physically doing it. And so this right here is an example. You get us at the table, and we are calling out people who actually run these organizations and saying, listen, you have to practice what you preach. And so that's a really empowering moment for me, and so I wanted to share that with you. Okay, next. Okay, and now here's my sentimental, this was amazing, I had such a good time. Like, I'm the only person from the US in that photo. We have Kim from Taiwan, we have Nolwenn from Paris, we have Nalima from Nepal. I mean, these were all of the BPW members. We would just find each other in the halls, and it felt it just made everything feel more attainable and accessible. And then Kathy and her squad, I call them, they were so supportive of us. Remember how I said this was the first time most of us have ever even been there? So they would help us go, okay, this is what you got to do. This is the door. This is the secret door. Like, this is how you handle your day, because it can get really overwhelming. You saw those 400 events. So you've got to pick and choose what you go to and just engage as much as possible. And then I want to reiterate that anybody can attend this CSW. I know a lot of people were confused, thinking you could only do it if you had the UN pass. The UN pass makes it cooler, but you can attend and be a part of all of these extra parallel events that, like Kathy was saying, were actually more engaging, because they're talking about what specific organizations are tangibly doing. And inside the UN, it was a written statement of what countries are implementing. And then maybe they would bring in a side business or something to talk about how they're working together with this business to bring, unpaid care work into the forefront. So again, anybody can attend. You too can take a fun picture like that. And again, my biggest takeaway was being able to see all of these issues on a global scale and come back to the US. Well, I was in New York City, so just come back home and tell you all about it. So that is my spiel. Let me know if you have any questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Ashley. You see why I love her? She's just everything that BPW holds dear, and she's young, and I just feel like I have so much more hope for the future when I spend time with these young women from around the globe that represent BPW. It's just something else. So, next slide. Okay, and I just wanted to maybe with the extra time that we have, other CSW attendees who might be on the call, this would be a great time for you to raise your hand if you can, and give us a little bit of input from your perspective. And I'm not quite sure how you raise the hand.
Okay, what I will do, can you all hear me? This is Deneen. Okay, excuse me. There is a question and answer mode, which I'm going to explore right now, and we'll see if that changes.
Now, I'm not sure if this is going. Hopefully you can all hear me, but if so, do you want to go ahead and end the slide to the next one?
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems kind of awkward.
That
just
one
saying.
doesn't seem to work. So let's just go ahead and go to the very end, and we can open up for questions and a little bit of a discussion if we have time. We've got about 10 minutes. I was curious.
All right. Can you all hear me? I just stopped the Q&A because it seemed to be a little confusing.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to all be, you know, mindful of trying to take our time. I'm sure we can do it. We do that everywhere else. So is there anyone that attended that'd like to share? I'm going to try to unmute each of the mics just to make sure we can hear everybody. Okay. Let me see.
Okay, I hear Elizabeth there.
Yep,
I'm curious if if anybody considers themselves part of this informal economy and how it affects you.
Oh, that's definitely me, Kathy. This is Deneen again. I have been some form of a solopreneur or a 1099 since 2004. So that definitely has an impact. I am privileged, though, in a sense that I am married and my husband does have, the quote-unquote 9-to-5 type thing where the benefits and all that. Otherwise, it would have been even more complicated, but that's something that I'm passionate about as well. And everything you touched on really goes to show how there are so many things that really relate to what's required for true equity. And I just appreciate it so much that you shared that, and I'm even more excited and motivated to get my buns up to New York and attend one of these for sure. At least one to start.
Anybody else involved in this informal economy where you feel the pain of that contract work, or do you employ any contract workers?
Yeah, Kathy, this is Sue. What would be like examples of jobs for an informal economy for those who may not have an idea?
Well, they cited several issues from different parts of the world, really. But for example, in Indonesia, And Ashley, I'm probably not going to get it right because I think of it Kojak, the Stephen King, but it's something like that, Kojeck, and it's an app. And if you can think of it of Uber and that app, multiply that by 100 different services, and what people do, because most of their transportation are on the little motorcycles, what people will do is take this app and they'll say, okay, I need my groceries. And they'll put their order in. The guy on the motorcycle will pick it up and bring it to them. They can do that with dog grooming. They can do it with massage services. There's a woman that they mentioned who's been on the news, apparently, in Indonesia, who has the best fried bananas in the world, and she makes $100,000 a month selling fried bananas in Indonesia. So we had several cases. In my career, we do new home evaluations, and we do them on site. And so we have a gig economy. I don't have one employee. I have maybe 50 or 60 independent contractors. And what I see is that if you're not the first one up, or you don't complete a job, maybe first time, shame on you, second time, shame on me. So if someone doesn't show up for that job twice in a row, I drop them. And sure, it might be that their kid was sick, but that's the point, is that the informal gig economy, contract, ends up affecting those of us who can't always be there because of us being the caretakers. So that's why it affected women more. So those are kind of two examples. I'm sure that Ashley might have that in her industry too.
Yeah, so one thing that, it's like Uber, it's Airbnb, it's all of these ways to make money that aren't really, you don't get insurance, you don't get pension plans, that's really what they were focusing on, and that's 100% really the film industry until we are able to join our union, and that takes years if that's the goal you want to make. But I think what they were also stressing is that women find themselves in this informal gig economy because they have to back off from their day jobs, if you will, to take care of children. So that's really the lens they talked about it through. A lot of women to take care of family or whatnot, they have to go into this gig economy to make ends meet because they have to be able to work their own schedule. And that's really, I think, what they were trying to say. And then you also have to consider in the U.S. How our insurance is tied with our employer, and that's another push to change policy so that insurance is separate from our employer, because we haven't fixed the issue yet of women having to work and take care of the kids, literally 2 full-time jobs. So those are the kind of debates people were having, trying to figure out what the plan would be, if the government can and should get involved.
Mm-hmm. Right. And for instance, there were a lot of best practices too. So on one panel I went to, I believe it was called the National Association of Domestic Workers, and they came out with an app, and instead of tipping your house cleaner or your babysitter, nanny who comes in, what you do instead is take the app, and the tip money goes directly into an account that's kind of like a 401, but it can be used for having a sick day or paying insurance payments and any of those kind of programs that an employer would normally provide as a benefit. So it was encouraging the domestic workers to use that and start doing some self-saving for those conditions. So I thought that was pretty cool. So anybody else?
If I can't hear you, if you're trying to speak, you may be on mute. So *6. If you press *6, it's the same thing to mute and unmute, which for some reason, as simple as it is, always confused me. But am I muted? Am I not? Excellent. Very good. And then there's the chat also if you're online. I don't see anything there right now. Do you, Sue?
No, nobody's actually typed anything as of yet. But now that Kathy, now that the definition of this informal economy or the gig economy is clear, that actually definitely defines what I do, because I don't have one, I have two that I do. I have my being a contributor to Big News Magazine, and then I also have my online ESL teaching, and both of them are basically contract jobs. And that's going to be, and especially with the online ESL teaching, that's definitely something that's becoming a lot. I see a lot more companies springing up right now that are especially based in China at the international level. And yeah, you don't get the benefits, you don't get the contracts, right, or you don't get all the other stuff. You just have mostly the contract, and you're basically kind of considered your own business in a way.
Right. Exactly. And there's no social structures when you think about it. You are not, there's no employer putting into your disability insurance or into your Social Security or any of those things. You have to do it all. So $30 an hour is awesome. But when it really comes down to it, you're going to have to essentially take out half of that and put it into a special account. So one of the things I came back with was a renewed enthusiasm to offer to BPW members some not financial counseling, so to speak, but to point this out that you're kind of shooting your foot off if you don't put this money away. And I had learned from BPW years and years ago when I started my business that you just have to take everything you can and either put it to the side for a rainy day, because there always are going to be rainy days, or to reinvest in your business and in yourself by putting some capital improvements in, and just don't look at it as being $30 an hour. Look at it as being $15 an hour. And it's difficult to do that when you have to put food on the table and feed your kids. So it would be just wonderful if our country at some point in time could recognize the service that this informal economy provides and come up with some type of system that would allow an equal way to handle that. Like Social Security, you're kind of stuck with what you how you contribute and what you're able to claim, and you can only claim so much. So again, that penalizes women, because you might go in there and make $150,000 for 3 years in a row and then take off 5. See? And so there's some way you got to equalize that so that when you get to be 60-something and you take it out, you've got something to take out and not relying on your husband's, portion. That's the tough part. So, right.
Absolutely. Very, very good. So we are right at 9 p.m., which is about our scheduled time. I do want to thank you all. I do want to give another second in case there is another burning question. Did anyone have any final questions for Kathy or Ashley before I wrap it up?
This is Sandy.
Janine, this is... Oh, okay, I'm going to go with Sandy first, and then whoever that was behind her can come second. Go ahead, Sandy. Thank you.
Real quick, Kathy, you said your thing next week was April 1st, but the Colorado website says April 2nd. Which
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, April 2nd, Tuesday, right?
Tuesday, yes.
Okay, yes.
7 o'clock your time.
Yes. And would you mind having someone put that up on our website? I don't think it was there. I looked today.
I didn't see it on because I went to the national website first.
Yeah.
And did not see it under events, so then I went to the Colorado website. Yeah, Megan takes care of the website, so do you want to ask her or do you want me to?
I will ask her, thanks.
Yeah, just ask. Megan will take care of it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, get Megan to do it.
Yeah. Megan will do it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that so that if people want to join.
Yeah, and while you're on, I just wanted to add that President Sandy made us so proud. She got up at the Claire Fulcher Gala and gave such a nice speech about the history of NFBPWC, because you got to remember, we're the ones that started this in 1919. International did not come along until the 1930s. So this is something that, you know, we're just so proud of, that we feel like we started the fire under these women, and it continues today. And she talked about how back in World War II we had a classification system, and that was one of the catalysts that got BPW going. So or World War One.
Yeah.
World War One, I think. Yeah. So yeah, you made us proud. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that question, Sandy. That does sound like a very intriguing webinar, Kathy. Once again, you're on fire, so definitely encourage everyone to attend that if they can. And then whomever was just behind Sandy, introduce yourself and go ahead and pose your question, please.
Hi, this is Trish.
Hi, Trish.
Excuse me. Hi. I just wanted to say thank you for all of the work that you all put into this tonight. It's been a while since I've been able to be on a webinar, and I almost didn't get on tonight because my relief didn't show up in time. But it was really nice to hear about your experiences and about what's going on, as always. And I just wanted to say thanks to everyone.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you, Trish. And we are so grateful that you were able to attend. You are quite a legend in our eyes. So I personally, as the current president, am humbled for your presence. So thank you so much, and I'm glad you were able to join us. Excellent. Anyone else before we wrap up here?
Can I jump in, Ashley?
Absolutely.
Well, I just want to put my trip into more context. I couldn't afford to go, and it was the local BPWs in my area in California and also North Carolina jumped in to help me raise the money to go, and I just want to do a more formal thank you in that sense. And I mean, it made me feel really supported and feel like I mattered, and that this group really wanted me to go, because everybody just jumped in and instantly said, yes, what do you need? And that happened the moment I stepped into New York City, too. What do you need? What do you need? How can I help you? And I want to say more formal thank you, because that was, the whole time I was saying thank you, but it was amazing to feel that kind of support.
No, you made us proud.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, thank you so much. And that is Ashley, so key. I don't know where I had heard it, but I carry with me something that I think encapsulates that whole, the essence of that whole thing, and that's, you know, as we, especially as women, move through this life of ours and through the world, we should have one hand up and one hand behind us, so that we can pull ourselves up and help those behind us pull themselves up as well. So I've always liked the concept of women empowering women, and I just want to thank you for acknowledging your personal experience with that. Thank you so much.
And I just would like to say that Ashley wasn't just representing the national, she was representing the North American region. She was chosen from the whole region as our regional representative.
Whoa.
Wow.
Thank you, Sandy.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Who run the world? Woo! Excellent. And any Beyonce fans out there? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so again, this is Janine Monroe-Rusnak, current president of virtual chapter of NFBPWC. I do want to extend a very special thank you to our speakers, Kathy Kelly and Ashley Maria. I want to thank you all for attending, and for those of you who will be catching the replay, which I will format and turn around and send out as quickly as possible. I will also share it on our social media platforms, on both the virtual chapters and the national chapters. And I do want to thank Sue for running the show behind the scenes and for helping us coordinate all of this. Just a brief plug for the virtual chapter. We will be holding a planning meeting in April and then an ERA webinar in May, either on the 16th or the 19th. All of our meetings and webinars are free to attend, and everyone is welcome. And we certainly appreciate everyone for attending tonight. This was a fantastic turnout. I'm going to give Sue the go-ahead to turn off the recording in just a second here, but I do want to thank you all. Have a great night and enjoy the rest of your evening, and happy spring.
Yay. Thank you all.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sue.